being reasonably happy about qualifying 14th in Canada.
Well, it's been a very tough 3 years for the team, and he came from Ferrari with very high expectations, and he felt that he had got the credentials to take the team forward and make it into a winning team. For very many reasons, a lot of it is politics and personnel, that has not occurred. But also, Eddie, I thought I heard an interview over the weekend, and I think he's been tempting fate a little bit. He was one of the drivers who's not in favour of the change to the circuit, where the cars, through those final two turns, 14 and 15 particularly, where you come on to pit straight, that wall has been moved back. It's now got two tyre layers in front of it. And he said, you know, we're racing drivers. Are we going to end up driving around a car park? You've got to have some element of challenge, or maybe even of danger in a racetrack. And I just wonder, I hope Eddie doesn't find himself being the first person to put himself into that tyre barrier, or one of maybe a number of people that could do it today. It has been a point in the circuit previously in races, and last year Nick Heidfeld in particular hit it very heavily indeed in the Sauber. So Eddie, just never tempt fate and things like that, but enjoy your 14th place in the grid, and hopefully you can do a good job for your team. He might, with the reliability that Jaguar have had this year, get it to the end and could sneak one of those last maybe 5th or 6th places.
Yeah, hopefully. There is quite a lot of problem with cars normally in this race. Average over the last 6 years, 11 finishers. So there's always a chance if you're in there and at the end of the race to get some points. David Coulthard, good to see he's got some support, but it was a disappointing day for him yesterday. Really bad luck. He was suffered with Takuma Sato's engine blow-up occurring when he was on one of his best laps, and then got out towards the end of the session only to have the rain fall. So he's qualified down in 8th position, and that's his worst grid position here in Canada since 1996. So Coulthard disappointed. Having said that, 1996 was his best ever finish here. He finished in 4th, so you can never tell. Qualifying doesn't always determine the outcome of the race. Michael Schumacher will certainly be hoping that, because he starts in 2nd place and not the coveted pole position that he's had so often here in the past.
I don't think Michael Schumacher is desperately worried about whether he got pole or not. It would have been nice for him to have another pole position. I think we're up to 49 or 48 pole positions now, but he didn't get it. But going back to David Coulthard, David really right in the meat of this grid, and I think a particularly, I would say, difficult or vulnerable place, because he's got ahead of him Nick Heidfeld, Giancarlo Fisichella, and then of course Raikkonen and Schumacher. But behind him he's got Villeneuve and Trulli and Pennison, and also Felipe Massa in 12th place. And it's always in that middle sector of the grid. If there's going to be an issue into turn 1, it always seems to occur there. Either somebody does something ahead of you and you've got to lock up and somebody tags you, or just somebody comes barreling down behind you, misjudges the braking completely, and you get caught by that. It's not a nice place for a car and driver like Coulthard and McLaren to be. They would expect to be at worst on the 3rd row of the grid, and David, I'm sure, will be very apprehensive on that first lap into turn 1.
And to improve the car again for the end of the season. But now the first things we need is really the reliability of the car to finish the race, and maybe here to mark some point. I mean, I qualified 9 in Austria also. This is quite good for the team and maybe good for the race, but 2 cars is very close. We need to push hard now.
I believe you've revised the gearbox to get over some of those reliability issues.
Yeah, I think before here we're testing in Paul Ricard, and we have 3 race simulation, and it's going well. Now I want to hope so to say today is going well also.
Of course, you've not so far finished the race this season. What's the work we'll be doing this morning?
Well, I think so. We work for the race, because here the brake is very important and very difficult circuit for the brakes, and also to find the best strategy we need, to be honest.
Wish you the best of luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
Laid back and get with the chicks.
I wouldn't say he's laid back when he's on track, but it's just that he's able to just, seemingly be incredibly relaxed before you get in and go off. There's a lot of different people. People have got different styles. Some people have eyes the size of saucepans, and then others are just take it a different way.
Warm-up didn't go so well for him, did it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was pretty strange there. I mean, they were not just off the pace, they were so far off the pace, it wasn't even funny in the Williams. But, again, he didn't seem that perturbed about it. But yeah, they were really down. You just can't always tell from warm-up. But what the drivers can tell is that this is their last chance now to suggest any modifications or changes to the car before the race.
Peter's here. We'll ask him whether he still reckons Ralf Schumacher will win it in a moment. But you can add to that discussion of Williams' warm-up 2 weeks ago, Peter.
Yes, I can. I think it just shows how important these warm-up sessions are because, as we know, Juan Pablo was slow at Monaco in that warm-up, and walking back down the pit lane after we were off air, it was quite easy to eavesdrop a conversation going on between the engineers at Williams, and they had a major problem with understeer at that point, and it was to do with running the brake ducts, of course, for the race, the larger brake ducts you need for the race at Monaco, as distinct from the smaller ducts they had in qualifying, and putting the larger ducts on really affected the handling of the car, so that was why he was relatively slow in that warm-up. So let's hope the same problems don't reoccur today.
Yeah, it's one thing being slow in race trim at Monaco, isn't it? But maybe a different thing here. You've got to be fast because although this track is tough to overtake, it's a lot more possible to overtake here than at Monaco.
Yeah, I said to Juan Pablo yesterday, is this a good circuit for racing? And he said, I hope not.
So what's the dirt and filth then, Peter? Have you heard any tricky stories down the pit lane recently?
Well, there are lots of sort of rumours circulating. It's that time of year, I think, when the old Fleet Street papers get a bit bored with things and try to stir things up a bit. And John Watson's mate Eddie Irvine's in the news, of course. Jenson Button, his future. I mean, if he doesn't keep the Renault drive, it'll be a shame. But if he doesn't, I'm sure Jaguar would be looking strongly at Jenson. He's just their sort of driver and the sort of guy they need, actually. A bit of young blood in there doing something well. But apart from that, relatively quiet. The future of Honda, of course, is a talking point. Just a shame they made such a mistake a couple of years ago going with BAR rather than Jordan.
I hope you'll get a chance to tell Dave Richards that later on today. It'll be an interesting interview.
Oh, well, that's a different BAR now. But at the time, of course, Jordan were winning races, and that was the team they should have concentrated on. You know, don't have to be a rocket scientist to realise that.
Yeah, no, I take your point on that. But you talk about Jenson Button possibly being under attack with his Renault drive, and obviously rumour has it that it's Alonso that may be getting the chance there, the test driver currently to Renault.
Well, I didn't actually say he was under attack. I said if he's under attack. I don't think he is, and I think he'll keep his drive. But all I said was that if he was, then Jaguar would be a good seat for him. I think Jenson's doing a very good job, like everybody else.
I would imagine there's a little bit of backdoor politicking going on with those drivers at present, because Alonso did in fact test for Jaguar recently, and although they tried to play it down as Renault were kind enough to lend him to Jaguar as an evaluation for some of their F3 talent, really and truly you could be thinking they're eyeing him and a potential loan from Briatore, who's his manager.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I mean, there's no reason to put him in the car. As Nicky Lauda said yesterday, poor James Courtney, who's a very, very quick driver, has got a difficult situation there because you've got Pedro wanting to drive the car one way and Eddie Irvine saying he can't drive it the other. And so what does the test driver do? It's a very difficult situation there. They don't have another driver in the car.
This is where the problem with the test drivers happens. But, I mean, Ferrari have got two test drivers actively engaged at different circuits all the time, haven't they? Badao and Luciano Berti.
Different situation, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely different situation.
So are McLaren optimistic? Are McLaren optimistic that they can show good race pace?
Not really. I had a quick chat to DC as he came into the track this morning. He said yes, he did have traffic problems yesterday and he was slowed by the oil. It's on the track at the wrong time. But the bottom line is it's a very pointy, oversteery car here, which isn't DC's cup of tea at all. So, you know, he'll be in the points and he'll be very good, I'm sure, in terms of using the race. And he's said already, you know, there should be some safety car periods. So he's already focused on getting a good result here based on all the variables that always come into play in Canada.
Well, nobody's set a representative time yet, Peter, out on warm-up. But Salo looks as if he's on a fairly quick lap now. He's just gone purple in Sector 1.
Yeah, just installation laps at the moment. Mika probably the first guy out there going reasonably quickly. Shame the Toyotas didn't have a better result yesterday in qualifying. The track changed a lot, as we saw with Arrows and Toyota, but both those cars should be a lot quicker in the race.
The Renaults were a bit disappointing, don't you feel, in qualifying yesterday?
A little bit, yeah, but they had a very messy Friday. I mean, Jenson had an engine problem, as did Jarno, and I think ever since then they've been a little bit more conservative on what they're doing with engine, because they need reliability, of course. So, not that surprised. 6-speed gearbox, remember, that may be a disadvantage on this circuit. And interesting, talking to Jarno a couple of days ago about the Monaco Grand Prix, I was asking him where Ralf Schumacher was getting away from him in the race, and he said up the hill, and into the tunnel. In other words, the 2 points on the circuit where it's nothing but raw acceleration. He said he just couldn't live with them on power.
We're just focusing in on the local boy hero, Jacques Villeneuve now, and obviously he's going to want to try and make sure that BAR does something. A lot of modifications to the BAR for this weekend, Peter. Is that kind of rate of development going to continue at BAR this year, or are they just going to start now thinking in terms of 2003?
Well, I think they've made modifications, certainly, but they're sort of in concert with the modifications that most of the teams are making up and down the pit lane. New side pods, very like the Williams, it has to be said, and a few improvements. Yeah, I think they've gained 2 or 3 tenths, and they should continue that upward graph. They've got the facilities, they've got the budget, they've got the personnel. There's no excuse, really.
Mika Salo, just to keep you up to speed, has just set a 1 minute 28.9, which of course is, even in race trim, we're going to be expecting times a lot quicker than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look around, flick around with your buttons, you'll see Michael urgently getting into another one of his cars. He chops and changes all the way through this half-hour session. Button 3 gives you a look at Fizzy Keller. And button 4 is a long view of a long straight here in Canada. On board with Villeneuve on button 6. On button 7 back with Michael, who's being strapped in.
Big question mark over this man, 1997 world champion for Williams. Been with BAR now all the way through since the inception into Formula One, and the entire program so far has failed miserably. And he is basically saying he's not sure what he wants to do. It's still very, very highly thought of in certain quarters, but what does he do? Because the top teams where maybe he'd want to go to start winning again, they're closed down as far as their drivers are concerned. Probably one of the biggest wage earners in Grand Prix.
I tried to nail Damon on that one because Damon said yesterday, didn't he, during qualifying, that Jacques is definitely not someone who pedals for the money. He, you know, he's a driver, and if he doesn't pedal for the money, why did he leave Williams for BAR in the first place?
I think that was a whole new set of challenges. He could have an active involvement with the team to, you know, bring a completely new project together and get that to the front. That was the dream, of course, but it just didn't work. And, you know, you can lose for a year or two or whatever, but you get fed up with it after a while.
car, it wasn't, you know, a reasonably strong bunch of 250, 300 people, and the company that Minardi is. It's not a small company.
A lot of talk about engine regulations at the moment, asking the manufacturers to provide engines for 2 teams now instead of just 1.
Yeah, that's right. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of pressure on BMW to start supplying another team next year, or certainly in 2004 when the new regs come into place. I think that is one of the ideas behind that new 800-kilometer engine regulation, to sort of productionize engines to the point where you can supply 2 teams. I mean, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, perhaps, but I think there will be pressure to do that.
Just take advantage of that pause, Peter, to run through the top 5 so far in this session. Michael Schumacher and his teammate Rubens Barrichello first and second. In third, it's your bet for the race, Ralf Schumacher. Pedro de la Rosa up there in fourth. And fifth is teammate Eddie Irvine. So obviously Jaguar's problems are all behind them, and they're going to finish in the points in the up-and-coming race, Perry.
Yeah, that's nice theory on that one. I'm wondering why we've got Montoya at the moment down in 18th.
He slipped to
19th now. So
this is a repeat of 2 weeks ago.
Just have a look at these fronts. It might be worth swapping them across for just doing these rear tyres. Go in.
some Jaguar conversation going on now.
With a bleep involved.
With a bleep involved.
He probably has a little button on the steering wheel for that. I'm about to swear, so here I go.
That's exactly what I was saying to Peter. You know, truly there, I think we're going to see an awful lot of that. And remember, drivers can get away with that as far as regulations are concerned, unless it's been deemed that they've had an advantage from doing it. And then they'll be asked to maybe come into the pits and have a little drive through or stop go. Olivier Panis, second driver at BAR. This guy really shows well sometimes, Matt. He really does. He gives Villeneuve a good run for his money. He's had a bit of a resurgence to his career.
The only driver not to finish a race this season.
That's why he's so fit, you see. He's just not getting tired anymore.
And guess who's the only one to have finished all of them?
Begins with S, ends in Schumacher.
Yes.
So Schumacher, yeah.
Schumacher. You started early, Perry.
I have indeed. You know, Ralf Schumacher's going to be under a bit of pressure because racing driver mentality means that, okay, you know, you can give a bit of applause to your teammate for out-qualifying you once, a bit more applause if he actually comes away with a pole position, but 2 in a row, Ralph's going to be thinking, you're just getting downright rude, old son. He's going to have to do something about him because it's a question of balance all the time, you know. Who's looking at you? Who believes you're the greatest? And, you know, are you getting what you want? Performance is power in this game. If you're the person getting the recent results and everything else, the team listen to what you want and do things how you want to do it a lot more. But Ralph has got a great reputation behind him, but that'll be going on in his mind. You know, most racing drivers are pretty insecure creatures. And you do live for that lap, and that's why that lap is everything, because that is your livelihood, that is what you're about. That lap says more about you than cash ever could.
So, he's on pole, Senor Montoya, but he's struggling in this session. And Michael Schumacher isn't struggling in this session. How important, can you put it in percentage terms, how important is it to have the lead through that first corner?
Oh, massive, massive, because, I mean, we saw in Monaco that, you know, Schumacher's Bridgestones really weren't that great in qualifying. That's why he was only third on the grid. In the race, the Bridgestones were superb. Oh, and talking about the Maestro, looks like we have an engine failure. Now, that's not going to best please him because that is probably his race car. I've got to get that confirmed because, as Matt said earlier, he does tend to chop and change a bit between the T car and the race car. But if that's his race car, they may not be terribly comfortable with replacing that engine before the event itself.
You don't often see that nowadays, do you, a Ferrari with smoke coming out?
No, you don't. We've yet to have that confirmed what it is. That could be a number of things, but most likely engine.
Peter's on his way up to the Ferrari pit to find out what car has just done that.
Yeah, no, that's engine. That's definitely engine. Yeah,
Peter tells us it's the spare.
It's the spare. Okay, well, if it was going to happen to one of the two, that's the one you want it to happen to, the T car. T car stands for training car, or as we call it in England, spare car. But Schumacher running back to the pits now.
Yeah, you can see that on button 7 and on button 1.
Wants to get straight in that. This is a different car, but by the time, you know, with Michael's settings in that car, it really should be like putting another glove on. It should be like getting out of the last car into this one. There should be virtually no difference, especially the way the Ferrari ran the whole deal. In the meantime, the team will be finding out exactly what went wrong with that, and their eyes and ears are going to be focused very much on any information coming out of the race car for the remainder of this session. They'll be looking at Ruben's car as well now to see if there are any telltale signs.
John Todt obviously trying to get through to us because he wants to tell us what's going on, and as soon as he gets through, we'll let you know. It could be about 10:30 tonight, but...
You can just see it in his eyes, can't you?
Yeah.
He wants to talk. Oh, Nishi's not having a very good time, Matt. Down in 21st position in the Toyota.
Oh, look, we're on the telly.
Aha.
This is just to give you an idea of what we see, which is pretty much what you see in that mosaic format, only with bigger, probably more expensive tellies. And that's the key to our coverage, that big thing on the top right-hand corner of your screen there. That gives us the position of every driver on the track, and also underneath tells us who's stopped, why they've stopped, whether they've carried on. And beneath that, of course, the data channel, which you get on button 5, and it's the same, exactly the same as the teams get. But you can't look at any more of that because all Perry's secrets will be unleashed.
Yeah, I thought Eddie Jordan was going to do that earlier. We've got a ringer up there at the moment, Olivia Panis, in 3rd position so far in warm-up. Only less than 0.7 a second slower than Michael Schumacher, so we suspect that the BAR might be a bit light on fuel, unless they've found some unbelievable race setup, in which case we could have a lot of fun seeing him come through the field. It's a lot of work to do for a driver, Matt, in warm-up, and for the team. You know, it's got the event coming up. You've got to make this is your last chance. You're not just looking for that outright lap speed. That's why sometimes I don't understand if somebody's running on really light tanks, because they're kidding themselves. But what they should be doing is running the amount of fuel they need to complete one stop. Now, Panis's time, if he is running with the amount of fuel that he'd need to complete one stop, you might start thinking that BAR are certainly planning a 2-stop strategy.
You often sling in a 3-stopper, don't you?
I don't think I'll get away with a 3-stopper for this one, but I do believe some people are going to try 2 stops on this, and I think that judging by these times here, is that Olivia Panis is certainly going to be the #1 candidate for that. Felipe Massa is 5th fastest. He had a bit of a nightmare yesterday in qualifying. Somebody many of us rate highly as a future star already, but maybe somebody capable of a lot more points, maybe race wins, depending on who he's going to be with in the future. There was a lot of talk about Felipe Massa being drafted into the Ferrari to replace Rubens Barrichello, but of course Barrichello has just re-signed for Ferrari, and that's put a smile on his face and led him into this happy period of life that he keeps talking about. And believe me, if I'd signed a couple-year contract with Ferrari, I'd probably be in a fairly happy period of life myself. Rubens Barrichello has just set the fastest overall first sector time. Michael Schumacher has just set the overall fastest middle sector time. And we're on board there with Enrique Bernaldi. Great driver in Formula 3 a couple of years back. I watched a lot of his races. I like Enrique. I think he's a real tiger in a car. Bit of a tough baptism last year at certain points.
Why are people, or were people, on his back? Is it because he's got a few bob?
I don't think so. It's I think that, you know, rubbed a few people up the wrong way by holding Dave Coulthard up at Monaco. Sorry, Michael Schumacher getting down right to those low 17s I thought was going to be possible in the session there. It's a 17.126. You see, I have the luxury of thinking that a low 17s is possible without actually having to be in the car to do it. And he's just going to gain fastest in the first sector. So maybe looking to break into the 16s. But what's happening with that man Montoya at the moment, Matt? 13th place, 19.054, which is putting him just shy of 2 seconds away. Oh, and he's trying, isn't he? You know, it's putting him just shy of 2 seconds away.
Well, I suppose you can post a guess at the same problem as last time.
Be that one.
Well, with only 3 minutes remaining of this session, really and truly, 15th fastest in warm-up is not what. Sorry, Heinz Harald Frentzen just doing a quell cast there. Took a bit off the car as well. 16th fastest, Montoya. Something's wrong there. Something is definitely wrong there. But Bernoldi, who we're just looking at, 18.013 puts him third fastest. So again, that leads me to suspect that Arrows may be looking at a two-stop strategy, because they were very disappointing in qualifying. Arrows have done some great stuff in the last few Grand Prix. Been very impressive. That chassis has looked good all year, and as we said before, it's their performance has been hampered by not getting off the line sometimes, but nonetheless, when they have got off the line, they've looked like a nice little package. They've been doing well, but I wonder if they're looking at a two-stop strategy.
Montoya 7th now. I just wonder what you think, as this session comes to a close, he's got 4 hours to sweat about whether they can get it right without him actually moving the car again. Now it's the race next, nothing else can get in the way of maybe Schumacher being a bit fitter into that first corner.
One of the great things about Montoya, as we've said, is that he is at 16.8 for Schumacher. Yeah, so he has dipped into the late 16s. Is that Montoya does seem to be able to put these things out of his mind, but you know, that's not a particularly comfortable position to be in, starting from pole with what looks to be a slow race pace, because if that is representative, if he hasn't got just some kind of niggly problem or has been somehow held up, then Schumacher's going to eat him alive out there this afternoon. Ralf Schumacher himself, 17.7. Now, that's 0.9 of a second away from Michael Schumacher. So the Williams is not looking desperately quick unless we attribute the same idea to Michael's Ferrari that we've talked about for both Arrows and BAR, is that maybe Ferrari are trying to evaluate a two-stop strategy and running light tanks. Because you wouldn't really think that from the evidence of qualifying that Ferrari had suddenly found 0.9 of a second or over a second now to be faster than Williams. It's going to be interesting if Pete comes up with any ideas here, because I think that maybe more teams than we originally suspected could be looking at a two-stop strategy here, and that's reflecting in these warm-up times. Some of these people have got to be on different fuel loads.
While we're speculating about Montoya's poor performance so far, you have to spot that his teammate and Peter Williams' tip for the race is third.
Yeah, but that's what I was just saying. But if you look at the relative times on this, is that Michael Schumacher's still on 16.8, give or take a staff, yeah, and Ralf Schumacher's on 17.5. So that has reduced it, but that's still 0.7. Now remember, the Williams to the Ferrari had an advantage of 0.2 in qualifying. So Ferrari have come up with 0.9 from somewhere to close that gap. Does that make sense? Be the first thing I've said that does.
Well, no, because John Todt will be on the phone again telling us exactly why there is that difference. The man for whom the phrase "it's good to talk" was not invented.
Bob Todd.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is definitely raising a few questions. One arrow's now flying in the wrong direction.
Just lost something on the car, maybe one of front
It's called the rear end, Hines.
keels when I went over the turn 3 over the grass. Yeah, I can see the right front one here. That's why the oil temperature is so high.
Well, if they know all that, I'm surprised they didn't bring him in. Nice internal shot of Schumacher there. Internal cockpit shot, of course. We're not that familiar with him.
That helmet seems a lot steeper than the others.
He had, believe it or not, this is how advanced this stuff's getting. His helmet makers have been in for even more aerodynamic study recently to create a new shape for that, to allow perhaps better airflow to the air intake behind his head that we see directly above his head there. So everything comes into play. So end of session. And we are left with Michael Schumacher, as fast as 16.78. His teammate Rubens Barrichello, only 500ths or so behind him in second place. Ralf Schumacher, third place in the Williams BMW on 17.487. So that is a significant gap there. Dave Coulthard, I wonder if this is a promise of things to come with the McLaren, 17.941. But that's a fairly tasty gap, isn't it? 1.2 seconds virtually through to Michael Schumacher. Enrique Bernaldi, 18.013 in the arrows. Very, very interesting indeed. That does make me think about this two-stop strategy. Jarno Trulli, Pedro De La Rosa for Jaguar, 7th place. Take a photograph of that, boys. It will cheer you up next week. Olivier Panis in 8th place, BAR. Juan Pablo Montoya, Matt, 9th place for BMW Williams. What on earth is happening there?
With a bit of luck, Peter, a little later on, and try and find out what the problem was, though I don't suppose they'll be over